Leaguers, welcome to the Spectacular Spoiler League. I'm the Pandan Superman, the mayor of Hype City, HazyRome, and as always, I'm joined by the God of Night, the Prime Minister of Post-Production, DeepBoyce. And today we are here for another alternate reality check, and this time we're going to be talking about the Mandarin. We're going to hit you with the reality of the situation, we're going to give you an alternate take of the situation, and we'll leave it up to you guys to check us on whatever we propose as a solution. So, the Mandarin, he appeared in a way in Iron Man 3. We did not like the way the Iron Man trilogy finished. And we did a previous video where we named the worst villains in the MCU. And it got me and DeepBoyce thinking. And we were like, we kind of want to talk about how we would have done the Mandarin right. Mm-hmm. How we could have given Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. a worthy end to the Iron Man trilogy. And maybe even, I don't know, a future Iron Man 4 if that's in the works. I mean, there's nothing confirmed right now. To be honest, it seems unlikely that would happen. Mm-hmm. But that being said, let's hit him with the reality of the situation, DeepBoyce. What happened with the Mandarin, man?
They pulled the bait and switch on us, man.
Yeah.
They pulled the bait and switch, and they took one of Iron Man's most powerful foes, and they took one of Hollywood's best actors, Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
And they made him into a comedic character of sorts. You thought the Mandarin was the real deal running things. He turned out to actually just be fake news.
I mean, and the thing about it is they didn't just waste Ben Kingsley. They also wasted Guy Pearce in that role. And having the Mandarin not really be this, person who wields mystical powers, this, this character from Asia who wields mystical powers and, has 10 rings that give him, various powers. They essentially, told themselves that, hey, we're not gonna take this Mandarin character seriously. And they pulled a bait and switch on fans, and fans were upset. Now, right after, Iron Man 3, was they were planning for the Blu-ray release of that movie, they came out with a short called All Hail the King. Yes. In this short, which Shane Black, the director of Iron Man 3, confirmed to be Marvel's apology to fans, they essentially painted a picture of a Mandarin who's out there and was not very happy with Trevor, played by Ben Kingsley, Trevor imitating him and essentially making him look like a chump. And he essentially kidnaps Trevor to do whatever he wants to do in terms of, I guess he wants to punish him. I don't know. We'll see. But the idea is All Hail the King, which takes place after Iron Man 3 because Trevor is in jail. He's in prison. He thinks he's doing some type of expose where, a reporter comes in to speak to him about, his role as the Mandarin and working with Aldrich Killian. But instead, that guy actually kidnaps him so that the real Mandarin can meet him. This guy works for the Mandarin. But, all right, here's where we should start. How could they have fixed the Mandarin, or how can they fix the Mandarin? How could they remedy the situation? How could they make the Mandarin a notable character in the MCU? Because I still think there's a chance for that. I still think that they could do that, especially if they take All Hail the King into consideration.
Yeah, that's really the key right there. Actually, I wouldn't even say it's the key. Even if they don't acknowledge it as canonical, they can still take that idea. And it would be a nice way to tie into the previous movie. Or even, I don't know, if they want to get a little cheeky with it, they can tie into all the movies. Because the 10 Rings terrorist organization was in Iron Man 1.
Yes.
And was in Iron Man 3. And they could even tie in Ivan Vanko as someone that used to work for them or something. Or they could just, kind of slip it in real quick there, even though Iron Man 2 was a bit of a disappointment. But with Iron Man 4, the real Mandarin, who in All Hail the King was not too happy with that movie, like some of the fans were. Yeah, he could come in and say, well, you know what? People are going to put some respect on my name. I'm not going to have them playing games with who I am out here. And then actually come out and try and take advantage of the situation. I mean, we already have several themes that can maybe work with that. I mean, we already know that in the Marvel Universe, not just in the movies, but in Spider-Man Homecoming, but also in Luke Cage, there is a black market for alien technology on Earth.
Sure.
Maybe the Mandarin is a big player on that. I know that they used the previous storyline of stealing Stark tech and the rights to Stark Industries. Maybe this idea is Tony Stark in fear of being surpassed, like actually being surpassed in terms of his technological capabilities, and him deciding on what is Stark tech going to be, like what's the future of Stark Industries, even though they kind of approached that before where he didn't really want to deal with weapons, but still, like, what is it that Stark is going to do? Like, what does that company stand for? And the Mandarin could come in as some sort of player that jeopardizes that in some way, shape, or form, whether it's like overtly he's just out there causing havoc, or it's like, you know, corporate espionage again.
So there's a couple of points that I kind of want to take from what you said and kind of spin it into an idea. I like where you're going with it. I like the notion that the Mandarin, you know, I definitely want the Mandarin coming for vengeance, but I kind of want to establish it with a base that has to do with the rest of the original trilogy. So you have Iron Man 1, you know, he's kidnapped. Tony Stark is kidnapped by the 10 Rings organization. The 10 Rings refer to the Mandarin, his 10 rings. Each of those 10 rings have power. The powers are Remaker, Influence, Spin, Spectral, Nightbringer, Zero, the Liar, Lightning, Incandescence, and Daemonic. And we'll drop a picture in the video so you guys can like see the various explanations for those powers. But I think the idea could be that, let's say the Mandarin was working. I want the Mandarin to be like this figure who hides in the shadows but has his hands in things worldwide, from alien tech to business conglomerates, to sports, to whatever you name it, whatever he needs to amass his funds. And now he doesn't also have to be, you know, the Mandarin, like, you know, it's a product of its time. When I feel like it's a product of the time when the character is created, you know, like he's an Asian character called the Mandarin. It's a little silly. But Asia, you know, doesn't necessarily just have to mean that he's from China or Japan or Taiwan. There's also, you know, India. There's also countries in South Asia. The idea is this Mandarin character could be someone of a background that is Asian in origin, and he is manipulating various systems around the world. One of those, you know, companies, one of those places where he has his hands in is Stark Industries, where, you know, Obadiah is dealing under the table to somebody, to an organization. You know, we know it to be the 10 Rings in the movie, but let's say Obadiah stands like, yo, we're just outsourcing to various PMCs and organizations out in the Middle East because we're just trying to make money on the side. But what he doesn't know is that the Mandarin was the one playing the puppet strings to all of them. So with Tony Stark taking out Obadiah Stane and changing the dynamic of his company, that maybe set the Mandarin off. Like, okay, this guy just messed up a company or messed up some interest that I had, and, you know, took a good amount out of my funds. Also, there's the idea that Iron Man clearly took out the 10 Rings. Like, he systematically, you know, went into the Middle East and demolished the 10 Rings. And maybe the Mandarin is not happy about that. Then you have Iron Man 2, right? Justin Hammer. When we start the movie off, Justin Hammer is on a witch hunt for Tony Stark. Like, essentially he's jealous of the arc reactor tech, and he wants to get his hands on that, right? Let's say maybe Justin Hammer, we don't know what his motivations are. We think he's just jealous of Stark. We know he's trying to get, you know, military contracts. But let's say maybe the shareholders in the background area of Hammer Tech, maybe they're pushing Justin Hammer to say, okay, we need something that rivals the arc reactor technology, and we need you to develop that. And he's like, you know what? I'm feeling the pressure from the board. Let's say maybe the board was actually being pressured by the Mandarin. Let's say the Mandarin, you know, is using his economic influence to influence Hammer Tech's board to make Justin Hammer seek out this technology. And you could even offer the explanation that Hammer Tech is the next biggest weapons manufacturer right after Stark Industries. You know, Stark Industries, you know, Tony switched up that whole company so that they wouldn't make weapons anymore. So the Mandarin moved on to Hammer Tech. Then you have Iron Man 3. The Mandarin at this point is at, you know, he's out there and he's sitting there trying to plot his way to get back at Tony Stark. But at the same time, he's also trying to get his funds back and try to re-establish himself. So he's kind of lying in wait. Then he turns on the television, he sees this dude making fun of his persona. So he at this point he's like, all right, now I'm super tight, because, you know, me sitting in the back has allowed people to think that the idea of a Mandarin is a joke, and it is not a joke. And then Tony Stark, you know, obviously has a very public, you know, beatdown of this character known as the Mandarin and Aldrich Killian. And the Mandarin's like, yo, Tony Stark, I've had enough of you. You've already caused problems for me, and you don't even know it. Now I'm coming out of the shadows to deal with you myself. Because why? The old villain adage, if you want something done, you do it yourself. You want something done better, you want it done right, you do it yourself. So the Mandarin steps out, and he's like, yo, you disgraced my name by taking out these busters pretending to be me. Mm-hmm. You messed up my interest in your company. You took out one of my organizations that I had operating in the Middle East, causing political turmoil and making me money. And you took out my next best, interest after the original Tony Stark Industries by taking out Hammer Tech as well. I want you gone. You could even maybe it's a situation where Sokovia, from Avengers Age of Ultron, maybe the Mandarin had interest there. Mm-hmm. And by Tony Stark, his actions messing up things there, maybe the Mandarin had some vested interest there that was also, lost.
Maybe there's also a connection to Spider-Man Homecoming as well.
There you go. Maybe there's connections there with the weapons technology like you brought up. Maybe, with Tony Stark, because it was alluded that Tony Stark and Damage Control had something to do with cracking down on the Chitauri weaponry, or the Chitauri cleanup rather. Maybe he was upset. Maybe he's upset about that too. Like, yo, that was supposed to be my thing. I was gonna come in there and start, being a weapons dealer. Now, as regarding his powers, right? Yeah. That could be alien tech. You could also mix Doctor Strange in there and make it be that these rings are taken from another dimension. Maybe they're powers that are channel things from other dimensions. Maybe it's Asgardian. Maybe there's been some situation where Asgardians have taken technology and he was able to get his hands on that through the massive amount of resources that the Mandarin has. And essentially, it could be a situation where Tony Stark is going up against an Illuminati-like figure. And I think that's a compelling idea where he's essentially fighting this person who, has been a ghost this whole time, and he hasn't even seen that he's been fighting him. And that the Mandarin has been trying to take him out for this whole time via Obadiah Stane, via the 10 rings, via manipulating Justin Hammer, via, all these other things. And finally, what brings him out of the shadows is the fact that Aldrich Killian, Trevor, they make a mockery of his name. Yeah. And he's like, yo, enough.
Yeah,
enough.
And you bring up an interesting point because, at least for me in particular, I think the way they would characterize the Mandarin, the way they would make him look, design him, and his powers, I think are very important.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of something that is more technologically based, and he could have, I guess, 10 rings, like something that evokes 10 rings, or maybe some sort of gauntlets or something that would evoke that idea of him having 10 rings. But they don't even really have to give those rings each, their own distinct powers. Because I think that's a bit overkill. Like, that works in a comic, but to kind of really throw that in there into a movie, just give them a broad, like some of those powers that the rings can do in the comics, just give them those abilities that you'll be able to see in the movie, in whatever kind of technology-based weaponry he has on his hands. But you do bring up a good point, and I think it could make for different kinds of films, whether it's technology-based, which I think kind of falls in line with what we've already talked about, or if it's more along the Doctor Strange end of things, which could be cool depending on how they approach it. Space tech, like maybe Asgardian or, Skrull, Kree, et cetera, Chitauri.
Yeah.
Depending on
I wasn't even thinking of the other, civilizations that are out there. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right about the powers thing. I do agree. 10 powers is a little overkill. And also has shades of Infinity Gems where each individual item gives you these access to these greater powers. And I think you're right about that. I agree.
And I don't know, maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but for starters, it'd be great if they didn't kill him. Now,
yes.
Maybe in a way it makes sense because it's a culmination of the Iron Man movies, like this the whole overarching storyline, even though that's not what they were going for from the beginning. The Mandarin being like a big threat or the big bad guy in those Iron Man movies.
Right.
But, don't kill him and maybe have him come back and maybe even have him in other movies. And maybe he could have technology-based weaponry and he could also maybe delve into the mystical or any and all of those realms or something like that. Because again, the heroes do, right? So why can't a villain also get into the same thing? Maybe he teams up with Baron Mordo, and maybe they work together. Maybe they.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
That's a great example. You brought up Baron Mordo, which made me think of the character of the ancient one. Maybe he is an ancient. Maybe he's someone who's old. Maybe he's someone who through these powers gained extra longevity, not immortality, because I've never been a fan of like immortality as a thing. But maybe he's a character who's been around for centuries. I don't want to evoke Ra's al Ghul, but I mean there is like in the comics he does have. There are origins where the Mandarin has been a mantle passed on from generation to generation. Maybe it's just been one man. Maybe that's it too.
And here's kind of another idea, another angle. Because I'm trying to think, after, because this will clearly be after Avengers 4, whatever Thanos, whatever they do with Thanos, it'll be after that, Iron Man 4, if it happens. Yeah. Maybe the central theme of the idea is Earth and mankind their mind has been open to things way out there, way outside, and there are other possibilities in uncharted realms and planets and places where people can take advantage to gain power, to make money, and maybe that's the Mandarin's his goal. Maybe that's the initiative he's trying to take. Maybe that's the kind of power or the kind of opportunity he wants to take in order to make himself more powerful, or even rule over Earth, or just become super rich, or what have you. Again, if it's not only just technology, but he can, with the mysticism, he can travel realms with science and alien technology. He can go to other planets. There's a lot there, which again they maybe have alluded to in Spider-Man: Homecoming. I don't know if they'll keep talking about that in the next movies in the MCU, but taking him a step further than just someone that is, hey, I'm going to destroy Stark Industries, or I just want to destroy New York, or like give him something that's a little bit more compelling, that's in line with what's already happened in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. You can have something that's really cool, because the MCU doesn't always have the best villains, and people kind of also they feel that Marvel in general doesn't have the strongest villains, but I think there are some good villains and characters there that can be used very effectively. And the Mandarin, if you spin them the right way, can be something really dope.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of I thought about this idea of maybe him wanting to unify, having been to other dimensions and seeing the chaos in not the galaxy per se, but across these other dimensions. Maybe he wants to find a way to unify it. Maybe he thinks that he has the vision to unify it and to control it. And through these machinations, he feels he can unify the world, where everyone has unify the dimensions, where each being in the dimension has a purpose, whether it be to make war, or to be peaceful, or to do whatever it is. Maybe this guy feels like, hey, he's got a real egotistical way of viewing things, and he feels like he can control things.
Actually, I got another suggestion that kind of came up top of my head, and I'm wondering how you would feel about this. But sort of take the approach that they do with Hydra, where Hydra is like an old order, it was way before the Nazis, and it had ties to like this weird alien, or I guess other dimensional being, which was a hive. What if the 10 rings have a more mystical background to it, and that kind of drives the motivation of the Mandarin and like the inner circle of that organization, as opposed to just being typical terrorist organization?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be 100% down for that. And like I said, this idea of manipulating things and being, and essentially trying to low key rule the world. I'm talking about like not even just present day. I'm talking about, because I mean, even if you think about it, to have the web of influence that I was even describing, you would probably, it's not something that you could just do in modern day. The civilization is way too spread out, way too advanced to do. But if you have it to do that, if you had something that was founded like centuries ago, I think you're onto something there. I do believe it might be a good idea for the Mandarin to be a title that's passed on to other people. And even if Tony Stark defeats one Mandarin, there could be another Mandarin just waiting to ascend. But I really I like the way we're thinking here, because let's be honest, the Mandarin in the comics, he is a complex character, and I honestly believe that it's a little difficult to bring on the screen. And I felt that, with the direction Marvel took in Iron Man 3, and this is just my feeling, my sentiment, I feel like maybe they recognized that. And they said maybe we could do a modern take on it by playing up this idea that the Mandarin is just, a name. It's just a meme. Yeah. And whoever's pulling the strings in the background is the true Mandarin. Like, philosophically speaking, I thought that was a cool idea. But when you look at how interesting the Mandarin could be based on his comic background, it just was a miss. But that being said, guys, this brings a close to our alternate reality check. We gave you the reality of the situation. We gave you our alternate perspectives, our alternate points of views. Now it's up for you guys in the chat, in the comments, to check us. Let us know what you thought of our ideas. Let us know if you liked what they did with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. And let us know what you would have done differently for the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. And maybe even a potential Iron Man 4. But, that being said, please support the Spectacular Spoiler League by hitting us with subscribe and supporting the league, joining up with the league to be down with all the things we do. Turn on notifications so you can be up to date with the latest and greatest coming from the Spectacular Spoiler League. And hit us with a like. Get this video out there so that other people can join up with the league and we can make this thing as poppin' as possible in the Hall of Spoilers. That being said, me and DeepBoyce, we are getting out of here.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna go find a writer who can write up these ideas we got. We're gonna find a producer and we're gonna find somebody who can let us make Iron Man 4. We're gonna do this.
Sir.
We out of here.
Peace.